Second.
Ms. Bucieri, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are in open session. Item F is presentations. We have two this evening. The first is a nurse presentation on COVID protocols by Ms. Toth and Ms. Muller. We'll give Matt a second to get everything set up, and then we'll move into that presentation.
Yep. Is that good? Oh, we can see it there too.
Before we begin that presentation, I just want to say for those who are attending virtually that there are two opportunities during our meeting to submit public comments to be read into the record. So if you'd like to submit a comment to be read into the record and you're not here in person this evening, make sure you do so once we open the floor to public comment, and we'll read your comment into the record. If you do so beforehand, we might miss it in the live stream chat, so just wait for those two opportunities during the meeting. And we'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Mrs. Toth. I'm the nursing coordinator for the district. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So before I start, I just wanted to reach out to our parents and thank them for the super job that they're doing with monitoring their children and keeping them home when they're not feeling well. They've been doing this since the summertime for summer athletics and marching band since July, and they've continued to do it now with the beginning of school. Some of the parents have reached out to the nurses when they're not sure of whether or not they should send their child to school, and we just want them to know that we appreciate their communication and encourage them to continue to reach out to us so that we can guide them and help them in any way that we can. We would also like to thank our faculty and staff for bringing their concerns and questions to us so that we can offer them guidance and follow up for any potential problems. Oh. Thank you. Okay, so for all the schools, when the students arrive and get off the buses, their temperatures are being taken by our temperature takers. To date, there have been no fevers or serious illnesses from any of the students or staff for that matter. Student visits are for chronic medical conditions like diabetes or asthma, some minor injuries, medications, and just generalized complaints. As I said earlier, the staff members have also been coming with questions or concerns related to COVID. And every school has an isolation or waiting area in case we need to put someone there that is showing symptoms. When illness occurs at school, if the student or staff member presents with COVID-like symptoms, they are immediately placed away from others, typically in the waiting area with their mask on. There are two things we screen for. The first one we screen is for exposure. We want to determine if they're a close contact, and that is within 6 feet apart for longer than 10 minutes with or without a mask, with a lab-confirmed positive COVID case, or if they're a household member of someone that has tested positive. The second thing that we ask is if they've had any recent travel to an area of high community transmission. The state has put out a list of states that are considered high risk, and if you travel to any of those areas, you need to quarantine for 14 days when you get home. So if the answer to either of those two questions is yes, we follow the COVID protocol. The student or staff member is sent home and referred to their primary care provider for further consultation or evaluation. The student or staff member is monitored in the waiting area until they are picked up. the family member waits in the lobby, and the student or staff member is escorted to the lobby. If they have a fever, a doctor's note is required for them to return to school, and if a COVID test was done, results should be provided to the school as well. If they have not had any recent travel or close contact, then we follow the New Jersey Department of Health school exclusion list when the activity level is low, and that's the green part on that New Jersey map where it shows you green, yellow, and orange. So if we're green, then we follow the New Jersey school exclusion list, and I provided the link there. If the activity level is moderate or high, then we have to follow the exclusion, COVID-19 exclusion list, which would most likely require them to have a COVID test. When the student or staff member is ready to return to school, that process is coordinated by Kim Muller, who is our COVID nursing coordinator. She holds Zoom meetings, phone calls them, and does emails. All of the nurses follow the instructions and guidance provided by the Sussex County Department of Public Health and our school physician, Dr. John Fisher. Does anybody have any questions?
Kathy, thank you very much. You have been a real resource for all of us, and between you and Kim and countless conversations. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The second presentation this evening is for Mr. Kepnes's retirement. Mr.
No.
Kepnes is, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, we have more.
Kim Muller's
I'm
going to
sorry.
speak.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kim Muller. I'm the COVID coordinator. So I'm going to go through what happens once we are notified of a possible COVID positive case. What has been happening is either the parent or the guardian will either give a phone call, send an email that they got a phone call from the urgent care where they were tested or the doctor's office saying that their child is positive. Sometimes the phone call will come to me. Sometimes it's sent to administration of the building where the student is. Sometimes it's sent to a teacher. So when I get the information, what I do is I make a phone call to the Sussex County Public Health Nursing. I have to confirm the case. Public Health must confirm the case. They have to have the test results in the system before anything else can be done. So what I will do is if they don't have it, they will investigate. They will call whatever the urgent care were, they will call the doctor's office. But in the meantime, what I do is I let Ms. Davino and Dr. McKay, we have a positive case, but right now we can't do anything until we hear from Public Health. Once the case is confirmed by Public Health, meaning they have the test results in their system, it's called CDRSS, which is a system that is used, I let Ms. Davino and Dr. McKay know that we definitely have a positive case. They in turn will, and sometimes it is me, we notify the building administration of wherever the student is that there is a positive case in their building, and then we meet at the affected building. And that's when the planning will start as far as what to do next. When we're there, it is Ms. Davino, Dr. McKay, myself, the school administration, whatever building it is. There is a union rep there, and there's, usually that's it, administration. Okay, what we do is we need to determine if any students, faculty, teachers have been exposed as per the local department guidelines. If there's a yes, if they meet the criteria to being exposed, then we have to call the affected staff members. Unless they're still in the building, then we will actually meet with them. We will explain what has happened, that there's a positive case, And then we ask the teachers to give us a roster of their entire list of class. Also, the actual seating chart, because what it is we need to determine who is defined as a close contact, which is within 6 feet for longer than 10 minutes with or without a mask on. So, and the teacher's been fabulous in regards to that, whether they are home, they have emailed, this is who sat by the student, and what we've been using is whoever sits by the student, so it's left, right, front, and back is what we've been using. Even though in the classrooms, the distancing right now is happening, that's who we use. We explain the close contacts that, again, defined by public health. They will get a phone call from public health on how to proceed with the quarantine. Sometimes it's not till the next day that they're called, depending on how busy public health is. And then what I do is I am given the information of the students and the staff members, if there is students and staff members at this time. And I, in turn, give all that information to public health so they can start their contact tracing. When including the possible close contacts, this is who we include: teachers, staff, faculty, students, in-class support personnel, special teachers, busing if they rode the bus or if they're driven into school, school sports if they're involved with any school sports, cafeteria personnel, and also if they are in the cafeteria if they have a duty. If there are no close contacts deemed as per the local health department guidelines, that is explained in the letters that go out to the district and the specific school, that there is no need for close contacts. Follow-up phone calls are made by myself to staff, faculty, students, parents, to see how they're doing while they're out home on the quarantine, see if they have symptoms, any of that stuff. Then what I do is before they come back, usually it's about the day before they come back because I want to make sure there are no symptoms, I schedule a re-entry Zoom meeting with them to make sure there's a smooth transition, because some of these kids are out for 14 days. Mm-hmm. That's the quarantine. But depending on when we find out, sometimes it is a little bit less based on the guidelines per public health. So the meetings include the parent, the student, a guidance counselor in the building administration, the case manager, the district informed trauma coordinator, and myself. I invite all of those people. Some of them, if they have other meetings, they're there, but most of the time it is myself, the parent, and somebody else from the school. Sometimes the meetings are phone call only, and that's usually based on the situation with the student. Mom or dad might say to me, listen, the student does not want to be on the spotlight with the Zoom meeting. Can we just do it on the phone call? So then what I do is I in turn email all of those people in the building. I say, listen, mom told me that the student does not want any part of the Zoom meeting. And that has been A-okay in the past, so as far as that goes. But there's always some kind of a re-entry meeting for these students. All decisions that are made to quarantine somebody, that they're not a close contact, that they are a contact, are made with the guidance and the guidelines that are set forth from the CDC, state and local health departments. We are in constant contact with Sussex County Public Health Department. I can tell you myself, they have my cell number. Mm-hmm. I have gotten phone calls at 7:30 and 8 o'clock on a Friday and a Saturday night. After school, emails, it's constant, which is a great thing that they have that, because we need to know if it is a weekend, do we have to quarantine? Do we have to do something on a Monday? Those are websites. Those two are the websites that we use. The information, it's public information. It's the guidelines that are set forth that I have, that we all use. Does anybody have questions?
Any questions from board members?
I have a question. For the guidelines, if I'm correct, they are the minimum, the Department of Health supplies the minimum guidelines recommended. So are we going above the minimum or just following the minimum?
No, we have gone above and beyond the minimum as far as our cases that we've had, as far as that goes. As far as the quarantining of the entire class, that was a decision that Dr. McKay and Ms. Davino made in overabundance, and to be super careful. There was, as if you look at the guidelines, public health only wants close contacts, which is that within 6 feet for longer than 10 minutes.
The minimum.
That is the guidelines.
The minimum guidelines or the
Minimum.
guidelines?
We went above and beyond and did the entire class and all the teachers
In every single case?
so far. We went above and beyond.
It seems like the cases that we're told about come on the weekends for some reason. Is there a correlation there on why it seems that each time it's like the student wasn't in class for XYZ time? It just seems like that's the trend.
It depends on the date, it depends on when they were tested and when we are notified.
Okay.
That's all it has, it just happens to be the weekend, but that has nothing, it's not, it's nothing that's personal, that's just what happened. They're finding out, sometimes, you're tested, I'm gonna use an example, say you're tested Monday, and I will be honest, we've been getting results back in about 48 hours, but because the numbers in the whole county are going up and so many more people are being tested for whatever their reasons are, it is taking longer. I know in the doctor's offices and in the urgent care, they are telling them, you can get your results in 3 to 5 days. And sometimes if you're tested on Monday, I'm not finding out, again, it's my phone call at 6 o'clock on Friday night, if you're tested Monday, or if you were tested Tuesday. It's over the weekend as they're informing me, and then I in turn.
So that
inform.
student that's tested on Monday gets to stay in class that whole entire time?
No, if they have a COVID test, they are not allowed in school.
Okay.
No, not allowed in school. They have to quarantine until the test results are back. And that is given to them from us, but that is also given to them before we even find out. That is given to them by the urgent care that they go or their doctor's office. They are told, and I will say in every case that we have been told, my son or daughter had a COVID test because they had congestion and stuff. I said, okay, you have to quarantine. Oh yes, the doctor's office or urgent care has told us. So as far as all the urgent cares and the doctor's offices that our students are using, they have been phenomenal as far as giving that information to the parents.
Okay. I just thought that weekend piece was very odd because
Yeah.
it was correlated every single time, so it was just odd to me.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
And then can you go into symptomatic versus asymptomatic?
Yes. Symptomatic, a symptomatic person. You go by the symptom date. Okay, so I'm going to use today. Today's a Thursday. So if you develop symptoms today, you have to go back 48 hours.
Right.
So 48 hours would be on Tuesday. So anybody that person was in contact with from Tuesday on is who you would have to get in touch with, not public health would get in touch with. If you are asymptomatic, you have absolutely no symptoms, you use the test date that you had your test, and you go from there.
But I guess what I'm trying to wrap my brain around is if you have related cases, because there's been a few related cases. So if you have symptomatic, asymptomatic, but you're basing one on symptoms, so that starts a different date, but then you have asymptomatic, no symptoms, goes by test date,
Yes.
but even if they're related, it doesn't matter?
It depends on every situation is different. And yes, it depends on if you have a symptom and if you don't have a symptom. And you're correct, they can be in the same house.
Right.
And somebody could have the congestion, the runny nose, all that other, and I'm gonna say the other two people in the house have absolutely nothing.
Right, and I understand, because I had spoken to the Department of Health in general, trying to wrap my brain around this, because I was just trying to get a sense of, if, let's say you have related, came from a certain place, but then you have a symptomatic, asymptomatic, but I was told it counts as one, which I was like, okay, because it's related, from whatever situation, but then you have two separate people walking around. You know what I mean? So yes, I could see because it's related, it's one, but yet there's still two, and even we know people who are asymptomatic still, can spread. So it's but statistically you're having two different people walking around. So that was the part that I was really trying to wrap my brain around.
The symptomatic person, wherever, is supposed to go into what's called isolation. So what they're supposed to do is they go in, they're supposed to be, say, in their room with their own bathroom, and their food gets brought to them outside the door,
Right.
and they're supposed to have no contact with anybody for 10 days. That's if you're symptomatic. That's your 10-day isolation. If you are asymptomatic, you have a 14-day quarantine. It's two different things.
That's what I was just trying
Yes,
to make
it is
sure. I just want to make sure because
it is very confusing.
it's very
I'm with you.
different,
It
and I
is.
just think it's really important to clarify the difference. But I was just trying to wrap my brain around, well, okay, you're counting it as one, but yet you have two separate people walking around, or
Right.
three separate people. so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I
that,
just
like I
wanted
said,
that
that is
knowledge.
all based on multiple phone calls that I have with public health as determining who is related, who is not related, are these related cases, are they not related cases? This is not determined by us, this is determined by public health.
Right, I understand that, yeah. They just made it very clear to me that they say the minimum guidelines. They said, we give the minimum guidelines.
Right, and then-
Whatever a school district does with that is their choice.
Yes, they
So
can
that's
go
what I
above and
was-
beyond if they choose to.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do any other members of the board have questions? Well, Ms. Mueller and Ms. Toth, thank you very much for all of your work on this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kim, terrific job, thank you. And thank you for all your time, both during the week and on the weekends.
We'll give Mr. Shea a moment to switch over the technology and get Brad and Joe on the screen. All right. Mr. Sweeney, Mr. Sparta, can you hear us clearly? Okay.
Yes, I can. Kelly and Teresa were a little garbled, but for the most part, not bad.
Oh, I'm
Okay.
sorry, we should have talked into the microphone, Brad, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's much better there, Kelly. Thank you.
All right, thank you. The second presentation this evening is for Mr. Kepnes's retirement. So I have a brief statement on behalf of the board, Mr. Kepnes, that I'd like to read to you, and a small gift to express our gratitude. After a decade in your role here as a business administrator for the Vernon Township School District and the board secretary for the Vernon Township Board of Education, I want to thank you for our service to our community. As a board, I know that we can be a handful. We request a lot of information during our decision-making process, and we expect a lot from our central office administration. You have helped us navigate some of the largest financial challenges that we have ever faced as a school district, and you have always fulfilled your duties with a friendly, collaborative, and hardworking attitude. I have personally enjoyed having the opportunity to work with you on the Finance Committee and Buildings and Grounds Committee, and particularly as chairperson of the Finance Committee last year. Over the course of the last 3 years, I've learned a great deal from your expertise, and for that I thank you. On behalf of the entire Vernon Township School District, I want to wish you a happy, healthy, and long retirement.
Thank you. Steve, this is a statement from Karen and I. For the past 12 years, the Vernon Township School District has been lucky enough to have a business administrator who not only began as a teacher, but had a teacher's sensibility about every major initiative we endeavored to bring about. You are, in a word, kind. You are a person who always wanted what was best for our students. To that end, you would find ways to make sure the budget you proposed every year to the BOE reflected a deep love of children and the importance of the new initiatives to make their education the very best it could be. If this meant extra hours on the weekend or at night to help with grants or grant writing, you did it. If it meant working with the staff so that you heard what they needed, you did it. If it meant presenting budgets that had expenditures that were worthy but not popular with fiscal conservatives, you stood your ground. Finally, Steve, it was obvious in everything you do that you care very much about people. You are very much about being kind. and you care very much about being noble. I cannot praise anyone any higher than that. Congratulations, my friend.
Thank you, Jack.
So we jokingly said, I think a few months ago, when we talked about Mr. Kepnes's retirement, that we would be honoring him this evening, and he said, I'll bring my guitar, and here he is.
Brad, this is for you. This is an old song.
Can we vote on this?
What are we going to do, fire him?
Tomorrow's his last day.
I don't know how appropriate this is, but at the end of the day, tomorrow I'm going to be leaving. So, I hope all of you, I hope you don't think this is inappropriate. This is my way of thanking the board for 12 years. But don't forget it. This is an old song you might know from Paul Simon, and you might know the words a different way, but the words that I have were actually his original words that I'd like to share with you.
The camera on him?
This is a tough audience. Sparta pajama rolled out of bed from a Pittsburgh vacation. When Chili found out, he started thinking about how to beat him to the destination. Sparta won the draw. His motion won the draw. Chili couldn't believe he was only second on the draw. Sweeney looked down, then he tore up the town when he won another election. And Pellet said, "Aye!" and Drake, another Rob Roy, tried to give him some financial direction. Well, they're on their way. They're not sure where they're going. Please help me, McKay. They're walking the line, Smith is starting to swear, so we went to Davino, the queen of coronavirus. It was Mitchell and Coughlin down by the schoolyard. 'Cause it was Mitchell and Coughlin down by the schoolyard. Annunziata said, "Peek when Bucieri speaks. Write down all of her questions. And if the answers don't fly, give another try. Keep them running till they get to perfection." Well, they're on their way. They're not sure where they're going. God help me, McKay. They're walking the line. Shay is starting to swear, so we went to Davino, the queen of coronavirus. Come on. 'Cause it was Mitchell and Coughlin down by the schoolyard. 'Cause it was Mitchell and Coughlin down by the schoolyard. Thank you.
I was wondering how
Yes,
he was
Devo.
going to say just our names, because they're kind of difficult.
Mr. Kepnes, it's probably hard to get my last name into a song.
Both of them, I appreciate what you did.
Those were the original lyrics.
Do any board members, before we go into a short recess, have anything that they'd like to say or share?
I always found it very impressive, Steve, that you never memorized the Open Public Meetings Act, and you always read it. When I first got on the board, you had said it was a goal of yours not to do that. So after 12 years, that's pretty impressive. So enjoyed working with you, and for some reason that'll stick with me for a long time.
And I just want to thank you for being so great with new board members, getting me kind of acclimated and teaching me some of the ropes.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yes, I definitely want to echo that. Always having an open door, taking a phone call, answering an email. Very welcoming to a nervous new member and putting us at ease. I appreciate it very much. You'll be missed.
And speaking of emails, thank you so much for every single weekend. That was the only time I ever emailed you, so thank you so much, because it was immediate every single
Oh,
time.
yeah, 11 o'clock at night. Yeah.
Yes, at 11 o'clock at night. So thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Steve, very much appreciated working with you for on and off for over a decade. You were always very diligent with forming budgets and explaining them. You will be sorely missed, but I couldn't be happier for you being able to retire at the age that you are. And I hope you have as long and a healthier retirement as anybody that I know. You deserve it. Congratulations.
Thank you, Brad.
If I may say that I think I was on the board when we hired you. And over the years, we've made some mistakes, the boards. No, but you were not one of them. Thank you for all of your hard work over the years, and you will be missed.
Thank you, Joe.
And Steve, I'd like to thank you for everything. And one of the things when people always say to me, like, what is Steve Kepnes like? I would always say what always touched me whenever I dealt with you, and whether we were at conferences and whatnot and talking, is I've always respected so much how highly you've spoken of your daughters. I think there is nothing nicer on the face of this earth than a father who speaks so highly of his children. And I've always thought that's one of the nicest things you've ever done. To know that you've spoken so well of them, and I can see when you speak of them how proud you are. And that's very nice to see. So thank you, and I wish you very well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay.
We'll go on to item G, which is a short recess.
Need a motion?
Am I missing out on some cake here?
Yes.
Yep.
Grab and go.
Yes, and alcohol, Joe.
Oh, man.
All right, we will bring the meeting back to order and move on to item H, approval of minutes. Can I have a motion for item H, 1 through 5?
Moved.
Mr. Sparta, second.
Second.
Sorry. Mr. Peak, questions or comments? If board members need to abstain from an individual line, they can simply say abstain as noted. Seeing no other questions or comments, can we please have a roll call vote?
Mrs. Coughlin? Abstain? Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Dr. Peak?
Yes.
Ms. Keller?
Yes, abstain were noted.
Mr. Sparta?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes, abstain when noted, please.
Mr. Nangiata?
Yes.
Mrs. Gutierrez?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, item I is correspondence. Mr. Kepnes.
In addition to some leaves of absence, we've heard from Daniel Hipper, Kim Rivera, Michelle Raw, Pamela Reed, Melissa Papadopoulos, Linda Barowick, and the others are medical leaves or extensions.
Thank you. Item J is the president's report. I have the last few meetings tried to keep my president's reports short, so I'm just going to ask my board members to bear with me a little bit. Tonight's a little bit lengthier. Good evening. I've now been president of the Vernon Township Board of Education for 10 months. Each month during our public board meeting, there's a president's report. On its surface, the requirements of this report are vague and undefined. In my role, I've used this report as an opportunity to reflect on the current state of our school district, balancing between representing the objective status of the district, providing commentary on the issues that are before the board, and sharing a personal viewpoint on key issues. The state of our school district, or the state of public education throughout the entire nation for that matter, leaves quite a bit to reflect on this evening. Preparing for this evening's report, I went back and reviewed each of the reports I've given since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. To understand where we are today as a district, I wanted to remind myself how rapidly our world has changed over a period of just 7 months, and just how hard all of our VTSD employees have worked to adapt to this change during that same time. People are unhappy with where we are today, and I get it. There are parents in our community who believe that their children are not receiving the education that they deserve, and in many ways they're right. Our students don't deserve to be in this situation. Young children should not have to wear masks for an entire school day or sit in front of a computer screen for hours on end. They shouldn't have to be broken up into various cohorts, only receiving part of a teacher's attention because our teachers simply can't be in 2 places at once. But this is a reality of the situation that we're in. There are educators and school district employees who are giving everything that they can in order to just barely make this situation work. They are professionals who have spent years refining their craft, becoming the master educators that they are, and now they suddenly find themselves working until 8, 9, or 10 o'clock each evening just so that they are ready for the next day as they try to meet the needs of their in-person, hybrid, and virtual learners. They shouldn't have to be in this situation either, and I truly wish they weren't. But this is a reality of the situation we're in. Inevitably, the situation has reached a boiling point. Some parents feel that their students are not getting what they need, and they are genuinely worried about their education. Some teachers feel that they have gone unheard, their hard work taken for granted. Administrators feel that they are working their hardest to make an impossible situation manageable with the cards that they have been dealt. Board members here at the table feel an obligation to represent the various stakeholders in our community. To add to it all, we are in the midst of one of the most contentious elections in our nation's history. We're dealing with economic uncertainty and the stress of a pandemic that is still ongoing. Under these circumstances, anything can be a tipping point. All of us, parents, teachers, administrators, board members, need to remind ourselves that behind the frustration that everyone is feeling, I truly believe that there is sincere, positive intention. There's no nefarious plan for the school district to favor one cohort of students over the other, or to keep teachers out of a conversation that they rightfully should be a part of, or to implement a less than perfect plan for our students with no intention of trying to make it better. Everyone wants good educational outcomes for our students. But we're treading water here as a district, and we always knew that we would be. If you go back and watch our June, July, and August board meetings, we said it then and I'll say it now, we knew that this year would not be perfect. We knew that the reopening guidelines from the state were flawed, and we knew that there was no good solution for how to educate students in the middle of a pandemic. But we also knew that we were going to take the cards that we were dealt as a district and work our hardest to continue to serve our students within the mandates we've been given by the state. It should not come as a surprise to anyone that 6 weeks now into the school year, virtually no one is completely content with this situation. This is a work in progress. Members of our community will all have different opinions on the next phases of our district's plan. For some, the plan won't reopen schools fast enough. For others, the reopening will be too fast. Right here at this table, we probably have 9 different opinions from 9 different board members. I know that I've made my position clear on this over the last few months. This pandemic is far from over, and we know that where we are today is not perfect and that it wasn't going to be. So where do we go from here? We have to continue to adapt and continue to revise. We have to continue to give and receive feedback in both directions. But we can't do any of that if we don't first hear and respect one another. We can't do any of that until we try to understand the unique position and unique personal experience that each of us is coming from. But when we all do practice understanding and patience for the situation that we're in, we can work together to move forward. Thank you. Item K is committee reports.
Do you want me to go student life? Student Life met on September 30th, and we did have 4 guest speakers there, our students. Dr. McKay, is it proper to share the students' names?
Yes, you can.
Do you have them with you, or?
No.
Okay, well, so we can leave that, but we had 4 students, 2 seniors and 2 juniors. 2 were in classroom hybrid and 2 were virtual. And we went over some different aspects of what we could do to bridge the divide between hybrid students and virtual students, and some activities that we're coming up with and working on to enhance the student life. And that's basically what this committee's about. So I'm really excited to announce that on October 27th, we'll have our class of 2021 senior drive-in night, where it'll be a Halloween theme, and we'll have some little contests and things like that. So we'll be sending that flyer out tomorrow. And thank you to Lindsay McAloney for her efforts in that. We did speak with the students, and a lot of what we heard from the virtual students is that the chat bar is amazing. That helps them feel connected. They felt that the short classes added to their workload, and they felt like there was a double workload. And they were looking to be able to interact with their fellow students that are hybrid. So we're working on that now, possibly a virtual pep rally, a virtual game night where we can kind of bridge that divide. And that's really what we're working on right now, but excited about the class of 2021. We're trying to come up with some events that, because of the loss of the events that they can't do because of the in-person piece.
That's good.
Thank you. Any other committee reports this evening?
I have 2. I continue to serve as our representative to the Northern Hills Academy. We've been having our monthly meetings. They are back at school. We still are holding virtual board meetings. They are doing all they can to provide services for their students, continually going through many of the challenges that we're going through. And one of the common themes from the superintendent over in Northern Hills is that she is very thankful for her community of cohort of superintendents that provide sounding boards, as well as feedback, as well as comments and a sense that they're going through this process together. So things are happening at Northern Hills, and we look forward to having in-person board meetings in the near future. I also have a curriculum committee meeting. We had a curriculum committee meeting last Thursday before the work session. Present were Karen, Chuck, myself, Jen, Brad, Justin, and Mr. Rogers and Mr. Gagliostro and Matt Shea. And very similar to the Student Life Committee, we discussed the ways in which we could bring curriculum-wise the virtual learners together and the blue and the gold cohort sections. We discussed a little bit about the parent survey that was just recently administered, as well as listened to a lot of what parents were saying about their experiences in those different cohorts. So we're trying to get better at instruction in those aspects for all of those different learners. We also discussed the evaluation process that's going to happen soon, and then we also began to delve into the board goals that were assigned to the curriculum committee to try to plan for the future. So that's my report.
Thank you.
Finance Committee meeting, we had a meeting last Tuesday or Wednesday, I can't remember. It wasn't a full committee meeting. Mark and Natalie were not able to make it, so we had a special guest, a representative from Buildings and Grounds, the representative from Buildings and Grounds, Kelly Mitchell, was there. It was wonderful to have her there. We heard some preliminary findings from our auditor about the closeout of 2020, and we discussed it at the board meeting last week, and we talked about what to do with some of the savings from last year, and we discussed it at the board meeting last week. So that's about it. Steve, do you have anything else that you want to add on that?
No, it was all rehashed at the board meeting, and it was ultimately the unspent funds due to the pandemic as of last March. So that was the conversation.
Yeah. And that was your last one, Steve. I'm sorry. I'd like to hold one tomorrow, maybe around 5 o'clock. You'll be available, right?
That's fine. Go ahead.
Yes, sure. I'm kidding.
Let me know how that goes.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. Are there any other committee reports? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item L. This is for public participation for items on the agenda and any student comments. We will first begin with members of the public who are here in person, and then we'll move on to members of the public who submit comments through the live stream. If you'd like to share a comment, please step up to the podium, share your name, part of town, and we will, and you have 5 minutes, and we will let you know when you reach that point.
Sure. Sorry. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Max Sorensen. I'm a 7th grade teacher at Glenwood, taxpayer Glenwood, 13th year teacher. I'm going to use the Jeremy Maguire quote for this. This is not a memo, it's just a mission statement. I'm going to start by saying you know me. You act like a lot of you really know me. I've taught almost all of your children at some point in the last handful of years. I would safely bet that they have good things to say about me. I would even venture to say that you have good things to say about me. You know I do my job well, so what I can say should carry some weight. I can't speak for every other teacher, that's not what this is. I can only advocate myself. This is building a bridge. This is building a bridge as we cross the situation. I mess that sentence up every time I look over. And yet the message from this group isn't that we are doing our jobs poorly. It's how we should correct our current failures. We hear about how other districts do things better and how things elsewhere are better. But we aren't those places. We're Vernon. This is the town you've chosen, and so have I. We aren't charter, we aren't tech, we aren't another district with a different population, demographic, average income, and so on. To be clear, I'm not lazy, and it's been implied that for too long. I provide a safe place for kids to come each day, where they get to learn about how the living world works. I did that for your children as well. I also know there's plenty that work harder than me. Some spend more time in the building, take the job home more. I'd like to think I'm just efficient with my time, but I know some literally pour themselves into coming up with their weekly lessons, and it doesn't seem that it's accepted right now as enough. I know many of those types of people are hurt as well. We used to focus on our craft, how to differentiate and reach every kid. Now it's about screen time and checking boxes, post this, update that, contact this person, learn a new app or extension, host this meeting, then another, and then another for the kids that missed their originally scheduled meeting. Be present for half of your students at one time, while it's impossible to be available for the other half, all while performing the regular duties of the original job. I think I've been pretty flexible. This has been a complete career shift. It's important to note that I didn't sign up for this. When I was 19, I changed majors from computer science specifically, and I told my mom this, because I didn't want to sit in front of a computer all day. Oh, the irony. Being in the classroom with the kids is the best part of the job. Now it's just one of the many, many details. Honestly, I'm not even overwhelmed. I'm on top of my grades, plans, and virtual lessons. I am just tired of hearing that nothing we do is good enough. It's one thing to strive to improve in all that you do. It's another to hear that things must improve because what you do has been a failure. I've heard this group talk about how much our efforts are appreciated, about how you're concerned for our workload and the stress level, only to box us in as a bunch of worksheet posters. And that's what that does is it disregards the custom videos we make. And Justin, you're a little short. 9, 10, 11 p.m., 11:50. It's probably more accurate. 5 a.m. So, the custom videos we make, the Zooms we sit on, for the few that show are the office hours that few adhere to. Then we're criticized for not having enough face-to-face contact with our students or providing a good enough experience. I don't need to fill out another climate survey to tell you that this isn't good for morale. My request is, and this is the conclusion, my request is that you take all this into consideration when you talk about the classroom teachers and what we're doing. There was no Schoology, Screencastify, Google Hangouts, Google Meets, EdPuzzle, Cami, WeVideo, interactive banners, etc. during our last pandemic, the Spanish flu, so there literally isn't any precedent set to draw any comparisons. Maybe put yourself in our administration shoes. This can't be easy to navigate for them. Maybe even put yourself in the classroom teacher's shoes, because I personally believe the classroom teachers, like myself, have had more put onto their plate than anyone else. We're the ones on the front lines having their careers redefined by the day, while still providing your children a sense of normalcy. A common phrase you hear during this political climate is silent majority. Again, I'm speaking for myself, but I'd imagine that this message represents a large, yet quiet, majority of teachers right now, feeling discouraged and defeated that what we do just isn't going to be enough. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Matt, do we have a microphone that works so we can...
Liz.
If you could use the microphone, the people at home have great field troubles.
Check.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Liz Cleary, and I have been a Highland Laker since 1971. I graduated from Vernon Township High School in 1980, and I served the Vernon Township School District from 1984 to 2018 as a teacher and a coach. I was the president of the VTEA when I retired in June of 2018. I thought my days of attending board meetings were over, but I'm compelled to come here tonight to share a personal interaction that I had with one of your gold standard superstar educators. This person is the epitome of the team player, devoted to the profession and a leader among peers, a collaborator, an innovator, a we got this kind of person, a loyal Vernon Viking, true blue and gold. And this person is ready to quit. I got a call at 6:20 in the morning, which for retired folks is early. First I thought someone had died. But when I picked up the phone, this person was crying hysterically as they were driving to school. And they felt they had nowhere else to turn. and no one to talk to about the angst of teaching this fall. The words, "I can't do this anymore," stung me to my core. Overloaded with too many class preparations and many unrealistic and unfair expectations from administration and some parents, fearful of the risk of COVID exposure and lacking trust in administration to be transparent about positive cases, worried for personal family safety, and absolutely sick over these new proposed changes. You're going to lose a superstar, and I thought you should know that. This teacher needs your help and support, President Annunziata. All of your educational staff does. They need more than signs and thank yous on kayaks. They need to be heard, and they need to feel part of the process. They don't want to get sick and die. They do want to do the best that they can for their students. They love them. They need you, President Annunziata, to use science and not political agendas as your safety guide for COVID. They need you to protect them. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Martin O'Donnell. Last week, I was listening to the workshop, and my daughter and I had a little discussion about the asynchronous, synchronous learning and some other items that were on the agenda for the workshop. And she turned to me and she said, "I want to go there and say something." So I'm going to turn it over to Calista.
Hello, Board of Education members and administration, and everyone else who is watching. I've come here to speak today because I feel that you should have a student's point of view, and I feel that you should... Sorry. I realized that you guys put a survey out, and I definitely didn't put as much effort into the survey as I did into the speech. But that's besides the point. In my perspective, I get easily distracted more on my own than if I was in a classroom. Now, don't get me wrong, some kids like to learn on their own, but I'm not one of them. I believe that it would be best for kids like me to, instead of having them do things on their own and learning on their own, we should have interaction with other students and teachers. It doesn't matter if the call only lasts 20 minutes. We still have someone saying, "Hey, you need to pay attention." And that's something you can't do with independent learning. On Wednesdays, we should follow the regular schedule with 40-minute periods. And you asked on the survey, do you follow the daily schedule of 8:15, 12:36? However, what you need to realize is that there isn't 4 hours of work to do on regular independent classes. The only classes that I've really learned something in is math and science. And that's because Ms. Holdereth is putting together lessons, and she's having Zoom calls all the time for live lessons. Mr. Sorensen has been doing the same thing. Zoom calls would allow us to be disciplined, and which you might not do if you're doing independent learning. Especially for the younger kids who don't know how to do that. Plus, if we follow the schedule for Zoom calls, you can still have your lunch period where you could FaceTime your friends during that time unless they're in school, and you can use a bathroom break in between classes. You would also be able to ask questions on the spot, instead of waiting however long until that teacher responds. Now, I realize that's not the teacher's fault because they have other classes, but but that's also besides the point. I don't think this would solve the problem for everyone because everyone is different, but I do think that it's a lot better than what we are doing now. Thank you for your time and have a good night.
Thank you.
Good evening. Dina Luthner from the Pleasant Valley section of town. My kids are in 4th grade, so usually I come a little more prepared, so I will apologize in advance. We're at a time here where we can't please all the people all the time. But I also know that at the beginning of COVID, we were one town, and it breaks my heart to see some of the things that are going on Facebook. So I'm just going to share a little bit about my experience. I apologize in advance. I'm calling out my kid's teacher by name because it is positive. My twins have Mrs. Carlson and Mrs. Scott, and we could not be any happier. I see them online because I'm also online, preparing for my classes early in the morning and late at night. I honestly don't know how they do it, because my teaching load is about 50% of theirs because I'm a special teacher and I have administrative work the other 50%. I really don't know how they do it. I'm amazed every day. My son will slide down his chair and in 2 seconds I hear, "So Trevor, what do you think?" It's like they just know. I can't see how they're going to prepare the quality of work that they have given in the last 6 to 7 weeks if they are required to teach all day. I don't want my kids to lose out on that quality. My students are half a day. I use my other half a day to prepare for classes just for the next day. I can't prepare past that. There's just not enough time in the day. I just don't see it happening, and I just am nervous that they will lose the quality that they have now if teachers are forced to be in front of students the entire day. I know that there are working parents who need their kids to go back to school. I get that. I wish there was a way that we can come together and help those families and not ask our teachers to teach all day, because I just don't see the quality of the work staying the same. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tammy DeCesar. I'm the aide at large for the district. I want to make you aware of the current treatment of the part-time paras. Our contract grants us 10 sick days and 5 personal days on the first day of school. However, this year we were not given either. We are allowed to use sick days accumulated last year, but their value is for last year's hours. For example, last year I worked 4 hours per day. This year I am working 4 hours and 45 minutes per day. If or when I use a sick day, I will only be paid for 4 hours. And we were given no personal days at all. As members of the NJEA, we are still covered under the contract that expired in June until a new contract is ratified. Therefore, not being given new sick days and personal days is in direct violation of our contract. Also this year, we are required to fill out timesheets like substitutes do. Consequently, we are 2 weeks behind in our pay. Our first paycheck was issued on September 30th. Paras who only work gold days were only paid for 3 days. The entire month's union dues and pension were deducted from that check. The New Jersey Department of Labor and Workforce Development states, and I quote, "Except as otherwise provided by law, every employer shall pay the full amount of wages due to the employees at least twice during each calendar month on regular pay days designated in advance by the employer. An employer may establish regular pay days less frequently than semi-monthly for bona fide executive, supervisory, and other special classifications of employees, provided that the employees shall be paid in full at least once each calendar month on a regularly established schedule." Our contract also requires us to be paid on the 15th and the 30th of each month. As a result, this is in direct violation of our contract and the state of New Jersey. This is my 22nd year in the district, and I have never before seen such low morale among the paras. It's not enough to worry about keeping ourselves and our families healthy in the midst of a pandemic. We also now have to fight for things that were guaranteed to us through binding arbitration. As a group, Vernon's paras rise to every challenge. We perform our jobs with pride and dedication because we truly care about our students, about the welfare of our students. To be treated with anything less than the dignity and respect we deserve is unconscionable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Karen Zapul. I'm from Highland Lakes. I have a couple of concerns. First, I want to start off by saying all of Trevor's teachers are doing an amazing job. I feel for them. They're doing triple the work, and it's a lot. Trying to stay on top of all this between blue, gold, virtual learning, I don't know how they do it. I have one son right now in school, and trying to even keep up with him between Zoom meetings, emails, making sure he's keeping up with his work, I'm getting burnt out. On top of that, working. It's a lot also for Trevor. Now his one class wants to start live streaming. If he isn't on, he'll be marked absent. First of all, this is 8th grade middle school. They're not going to college next year. So as far as him trying to be teaching him responsibility, I'm trying my best, but again, not being home and making sure he's up and doing this is not going to be easy. Second, do you know how often my internet can go out? So if he's home and he does suffer from anxiety and his internet is, we don't have internet, his anxiety is going through the roof. I can't help him because I'm at work. So he's marked absent. This is hard for parents that have to work. It's not right. Some kids can handle it, they don't have a problem. Trevor is not that type of student. The main thing is that he is getting his work done. If he can do a Zoom, great. If not, he should not be marked absent. This is too much for teachers, students, and parents. Something has to give because we're only in October and everyone is getting burnt out. What may work for one school is not working for us. This is affecting everyone's mental health. I really think you need to sit down with teachers, listen to their concerns, and feel and see what else you can come up with. I feel that what's happening is starting to fall apart and everyone is getting stressed out. You are putting your staff, students, all on a high stress level. I'm not the only one that is feeling like this, and I hope something can be done. Thank you.
Do any other members of the public who are attending in person like to share?
Hi, everybody. My name is Janet DeCenzo. I am a 10-year employee of Vernon Township, very proud to work here, love my job. I have a very different perspective than some folks who are here tonight in that I walk a very fine line. I walk closely with the faculty and supporting them in my job as a technology coach. I work closely with special ed students who have special needs and need technology. I work closely with administration in trying to develop materials and professional development supports for our teachers. So I just have to share a few thoughts on what I was thinking after last week's meeting. I have a very different perspective in that I meet with teachers one-on-one to talk about their teaching practices, use of technology, and never before have I met with teachers and we talk about, okay, let's do your lesson and talk about Schoology, and they just break down and cry. And it shouldn't be that way. It's just getting to be too much. I see their exhaustion. I try to be there to support them. We're all working crazy hours, we all know that. But we keep saying that we appreciate them, they're doing a great job, but now we're going to tweak it and change everything up again. We're going to totally throw a wrench into this. And we were just kind of getting into a groove, and I think the students were learning more, and I think they knew what to be expected, and it's been really difficult to get to that point. So, you know, as Mr. Nunziata said, we knew this year wasn't going to be perfect. We all had the board's support in July. We felt very supported in July. When we were afraid of the reopening, we had a lot of people sit on that reopening committee and put a plan together, and the board said, we can't support this plan, we're going to vote it down. We don't feel comfortable opening. We don't feel that all of our staff are going to be safe. I'm not hearing that anymore, and I'm not sure what has changed. Our numbers have gone up in New Jersey. Now we're going to bring class sizes together with maybe 30 kids in a room. We have some classes that are going to be more than 30 kids in a room, and I'm sorry, there's just no way to stay safe and social distance with 34 kids in one classroom. You can give them all the masks you want. And we talk about contact tracing. You have one kid who's exposed, they're symptomatic, they test positive. Now, how many kids do we have to quarantine if you've got 30 kids in a room? So these are some of the things that we are thinking about as we are trying to put together our lessons, make and create new activities. And there's a lot of tech out there, folks, and sometimes I feel really guilty and really bad in putting out another training or another PD or another tool you can use if you want. But that's my job. I try to stay off of Facebook because it's become really, really toxic. I can't read it anymore. I don't think it's good for my social emotional state. Even though I'm a tech person and I'm all about the social media, I can't read it anymore. What I was waiting to hear from the board last week was a discussion about what the research supports. What do best practices support? Not why are we listening to parents? And I'm a parent, and I respect the parents, but parents say they want synchronous, they want synchronous, they want synchronous. I've been doing a lot of research on blended learning. I've been doing a lot of research, and some of you know me, I'm a research person. I'm on Twitter all the time. I like to see what best practices are. I have yet to find an article that says sitting in front of a camera while a teacher lectures for 40 minutes in 5 continuous classes is the best way to learn. I want to make sure that that's not what the expectation is, because it's not effective teaching. Those of you who are in education know about Bloom's taxonomy and what is the most effective way of providing instruction. And straight lecture is at the bottom. So I just hope that parents remember that, okay? I don't want that to become an expectation. I'm also afraid that we're trying to drive a one-size-fits-all approach to learning because that's what they're doing in other districts. It's working great at Tech. It's working great in Meyer, and it's working great in this school that has cameras. We don't have a one-size-fits-all. Every kid learns differently, and I think we have to remember that. I have a child with special needs. He's an adult now. He had ADD. I can't imagine the wars we would have if I expected him to sit in front of a screen and learn through a Zoom meeting 5 classes a day. My daughter's doing it in college. She's saying it's totally ineffective. It's just not a good way to learn. And none of this is good. We understand we're not in a situation where there's going to be, hey, this is working great and this is the way we need to go. It's not possible. But I just also want to make sure that we're staying in reality here. I'm from Sparta. We're still not in school. We have the most cases in a school district in Sussex County. I don't want to see that happen in Vernon. That scares the hell out of me. So I just really want to keep that in mind. The other thing I just want to say is we have teachers here with multiple degrees. They're experts in their craft. And we're not willing to give them the benefit of the doubt that they know what's best for their students. At the last meeting, I heard discussions about what's fair, what's equitable. They're 2 different things. What works for an AP class is not going to work for a resource class. So we can't expect that synchronous is going to work for everybody. And I just want to make sure that everybody understands that. If a teacher says, I'm going to do a mini lesson, I'm going to teach for 15 minutes, and then I'm going to shut off Zoom, and you guys are going to work independently, then give them the benefit of the doubt. That's best practice. I just want to give our teachers that respect. They're working so hard. So I just want to express that because I'm seeing on a daily basis, we were asking people for patience and grace this summer because we knew this was going to be hard and we knew it was going to be different. I'm not seeing patience and grace on Facebook. I'm hearing that parents are coming in telling teachers, I think you should do it this way. I hear parents are putting together Facebook pages, private Facebook pages for all the parents in classes, and they're bashing the teachers. There's not a teacher here who doesn't want what's best for their students, and I think we just need to remember that. And that's all I wanted to share.
Thank you. Do any other members of the public who are here in person want to make a public comment before we move on to those who have submitted comments through the live stream? Okay, seeing none, I'll move on to the comments that have come through on the live stream. The first comment is from Jen Valerius of Scenic Lakes. My 4 kids and I currently work with over 30 teachers and staff members in the Vernon District virtually. Their support goes beyond what I could ever imagine. Mr. Shea, I think some of that comment cut off, so we'll revisit that if it did.
It was cut off in the chat.
Okay. The next comment is from Amanda of Glenwood. Once all hybrid students are back to school 5 days a week, will virtual be logging in every day to watch the live classes? The worry is them being left behind. And I know that there's a lot of questions that probably will come through on the live stream, so we'll revisit those either later in this evening, or if we don't have answers for them tonight, Ms. Davino and Dr. McKay will take those questions down and make sure that, these are all things that are being taken into consideration. The next comment is from Linda Kroger Wilson of Highland Lakes. If virtual students are not joining every day, can it work with teachers to post mandatory Zoom times in one place for all Zoom meetings in advance? Always made sense to create the very best virtual that could be used by virtual students and in-school students. Fewer teachers and/or aides would be needed to supervise. Thank you for all you do. The next comment is from Brian Rizzo. My son is being bullied on Zoom. What is being done about it? And we'll make sure that the administration reaches out about that. The next comment is from Lisa Jezebel of Maple Grange, Glenwood. My 6th will have 35 students in her classes. My 4th grader will have 29 when Blue Gold come together. Why are we willing to risk the health and safety of the backbone of our community, our kids and teachers? How will social distancing occur with that many students in person? How can we expect to keep our kids and teachers safe with increasing case numbers predicted to skyrocket in the next few weeks? How is improper, outdated ventilation going to be handled during winter months? Fresh air, mask breaks, this is a massive problem. Buses already have windows closed. The next comment is from Aline DeJager of Sussex. Will there be a max capacity of individuals per classroom when the cohorts mix? My concern is going from small numbers now to potentially 30 students in a classroom. The next comment is from Martin Peringer. I really think the HR situation in this district should be addressed and fixed before it spirals out of control, especially in view of the fact that COVID numbers are rising. And the next comment is from Tracy Cryan of Highland Lakes. Come December, when kids are back 5 days a week, full days, how will it work for virtual kids? Will they lose their teachers and Zoom time? And that was the last comment that came through on the live stream. And many of those comments were in the form of questions that the administration can address later in the evening or at a later date.
Justin, because we have so many comments, are we allowed to have some discussion on some questions and answers to those comments? Because we've had quite a few, and I'm a little confused on some of the data.
It probably would be improper to open up a dialogue at this point in the meeting, but there's other opportunities in the meeting to revisit some of these topics.
Okay, so should we just make notes on what was said here and
Yeah,
then
absolutely.
circle back to it? At what point can we do that?
The superintendent's report, some issues or topics may be brought up. We also have the open board member forum where we can have a more open dialogue.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I just think because of the enormity of comments that we should talk about them.
Go ahead. I absolutely agree.
Okay.
Are there any other comments from members of the public this evening before we close it to the public? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the... Oh. Two last comments came through. Scott Berge, and the comment is, Steve, thank you for your professionalism and dedication to this great school district. All the best in your retirement. And the last comment that came through is from Terry Griffin. How does it make sense to have the largest classes in 5th grade ever during a pandemic? So seeing no other comments come through at this time, we'll close it to the public for now. There's a second public participation section at the end of the meeting. And we'll move on to item M, the superintendent's report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Annunziata, members of the board, members of the public. We are attempting to educate children during the 2020-2021 school year, excuse me, amidst a global pandemic. I want to remind everyone tonight that no one ever said that this task would be easy. No one ever said it would be successful. No one ever said there would be joy or happiness. The words used over and over again to describe the state of our nation as a whole are words like unprecedented or navigating through uncharted waters. No one said we would get it right the first time, but I certainly hope there is no next time. To that end, I implore you, me, us, to work collaboratively to support one another and work towards solutions with patience, kindness, and grace. After the Board of Education meeting last week, I began to consider the phases of reopening. In the interest of keeping the community informed and trying to continue the progress towards some type of normalcy within the pandemic, I made revisions. These revisions were iterated, reviewed, and drafted. But through iteration after iteration, COVID-19 does not allow us to have a final plan or a predictable outcome. On Monday, I released the next phase of our reopening plan. My hope was to meet with the VTEA leadership, who I've been working with hand in hand. Even though we do not agree on various facets of education in 2020, I've always kept them informed. My plan was to inform the board, to whom I report, so they would receive advance notice. My goal was to have professional development and resources available to best facilitate what our educators need in order to deliver instruction with a focus on engaging all learners via a blended learning platform. This week, our educators, blended learning specialists, and administrators worked tirelessly to create the asynchronous, synchronous teaching and learning expectations for each building. They've done an outstanding job. My goal was to incrementally share and to articulate with stakeholders. While the plan came from my office, the challenges in successfully communicating a vision of success during times of crisis are nearly impossible. Things do not always go as planned. Neither has this school year. I share this lens with you so you can fully understand that the best laid plans do not always come to fruition. No one said this year would be easy or good or successful, but we are here and everyone is doing the best they can. The latest iteration of the reopening plan is likely not the last one. As COVID changes, and what we know about COVID changes, the plan may also change. I feel I must state again, this may not be the final iteration. I realize this year that there is no equity. COVID has not permitted equity for any of us. For the exclusively virtual learners, we will continue to identify creative solutions to support those who feel the most isolated from their student peers and teachers. For our teachers, we will continue to provide professional development and support for your outstanding efforts during our most difficult time. With that, I will share a few closing remarks. Please be supportive of our teachers and staff who are working tirelessly, our administration who are always available to assist you, our custodians who are maintaining a clean environment, our board who volunteer many hours of committed time to the district, our families who struggle with balancing work and educating their children, and our students who are still navigating through the challenges of submitting work and participating in school electronically. I wish everyone continued success through these and our future challenges. Mr. Annunziata, shall I continue, or
Yes.
do you want to? Okay. Under Informational Matters, number 1A, be attached as part of the district-wide Week of Respect, October 5th through October 9th, 2020. Activities that were conducted in all schools, attachment A. And letter B, under Informational Matters, congratulations to 7th grader Maureen Lovett, who is a Scope magazine winner of their Superfans February 2020 contest, while Maureen Lovett was the 6th grader in Ms. Mitchell's Language arts class, the class was assigned the topic, discuss how fan culture can be both positive and negative. Reading 2 articles, the students had to synthesize information in 2 articles and study the author's craft, text, and structure. Maureen was one of 5 national winners of the Scope Magazine contest. Maureen won the book The Perfect Star by Rob Boya. Letter C, Boy Scout Yorgo Liaros with Troop 912 completed his Eagle Scout project at Glen Meadow Middle School. Yorgo rebuilt the retaining wall, garden bed, and designed a new garden. The new wall and garden helps brighten and makes the front entrance of the school welcoming and inviting. Letter D, congratulations to Dr. Adam Kendler, Supervisor of Special Services, on earning his EDD from Fairleigh Dickinson University. He successfully defended his dissertation, which was titled Analysis of Categorical Proficiency for 3rd grade through 8th grade students on the 2014 New Jersey Ask and the 2015 End-of-Year Park Assessments.
Just for clarification, Adam's degree was a Psych D. Okay, just for the minutes. Thanks.
Thank you. Item 2 is recommendations.
Number 2A, it is recommended that the board approve the following faculty, staff resignations, retirements, terminations, leaves, transfers, assignment changes, appointments, stipends, salary adjustments, student teaching, mentoring as listed. For the members of the board, the table begins at the bottom of page 4 and goes all the way through page 5 and to the top of page 6.
Can we have a motion for recommendation 2A?
Moved.
Mr. Sparta, a second.
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 Ms. Bucieri, questions or comments? Seeing none, can I please have a roll call vote?
Yes.
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 Yes, I can barely hear you.
Yes.
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 Thank you.
Letter B, it is recommended that the board approve professional development travel that complies with the provisions of New Jersey statutes annotated NJSA 18A:11-12, attachment B.
Can we have a motion for recommendation 2B?
Moved.
Mr. Sparta, second.
Second.
Mr. Sweeney, questions or comments? Seeing none, can we please have a roll call vote?
Yes.
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 Letter C, it is recommended that the board approve the harassment, intimidation, and bullying, school safety, and random drug testing reports.
Can we have a motion for recommendation 2C?
Moved.
Mr. Sparta, second.
Second.
Mr. Peak, questions or comments? I do have a question or comment, somewhat on the subject. We did have a comment come through this evening from a parent.
We would have to
Is there
file.
and of course, I know that's, I don't want to discuss the individual student, of course, but what is the process in place for monitoring HIB with virtual learners?
Right, what would have to happen is either that would be reported out by the parents or the teacher to the principal, and we would begin an investigation.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, can we please have a roll call vote?
Ms. Pellet?
Yes.
Mr. Sparta?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Nunziata?
Yes.
Mrs. Bucieri?
Yes.
Mrs. Calvin?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Dr. Peak?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Letter D, it is recommended that the board approve the nursing services plan for the 2020-2021 school year, attachment C.
We have a motion for recommendation 2D.
Moved.
Mr. Sparta, second.
Second.
Mr. Peak, questions or comments?
Thank you, Kathy.
Seeing none, can we please have a roll call vote?
Mr. Sparta?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Nunziata?
Yes.
Mrs. Bucieri?
Yes.
Mrs. Calvin?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Dr. Peak?
Yes.
Ms. Pellet?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Letter E, in accordance with Public Law 2001, Chapter 299, amending Section 1 of the Public Law 1982, Chapter 163, 18A:17-46, the school district's 1920 Student Safety Data System, SSDS report is attached. The board and the administration will entertain questions and comments on this matter at this time.
So as stated, the board is required by statute to hold a public hearing on the matter. So if any members of the public, virtual or in person this evening, would like to comment, they're welcome to do so.
I believe the handout was regarding the comment or the student safety data system also.
Okay. Seeing no comments, we'll close it to the public. Are there any questions or comments from members of the board? Seeing none, can we please have a roll call vote?
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Dr. Peak?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sparta?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Are we voting on E or F?
F.
F.
F. Yes, yes.
Mr. Annunziata?
Yes.
Mrs. Gutierrez?
Yes.
Mrs. Conlon?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Letter G, it is recommended that the board approve the 2020-2021 superintendent goals, attachment E.
Can we have a motion? I'm sorry, are we on F or E? That was.
G, but we're on G now.
E was the hearing and the vote was for F, so.
Right.
We'll need to,
Go back.
we did not technically have a motion and a second for 2F, so I'd like to redo that. Can we have a motion for recommendation 2F?
Moved.
Mr. Sparta?
Second.
Mr. Sweeney? Questions or comments at this time?
That was why I was confused.
No, thank you, Mr. Sweeney. Now may we please have a roll call vote for recommendation 2F?
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Dr.
Sorry.
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sparta?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Annunziata?
Yes.
Mrs. Gutierrez?
Yes.
Mrs. Conlon?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item G.
Letter G, it is recommended that the board approve the 2020-2021 superintendent goals, attachment E.
Can we have a motion for recommendation 2G?
Moved.
Mr. Sparta, second.
Second.
Mr. Peak, questions or comments?
Yeah, I would just like to go back to the indicators of success for monitor the Department of Special Services to ensure that we are meeting the needs of all students. Last week, we discussed where it said A and B, the Director of Special Services, and then we added Interim Director of Special Services. I just wanted to loop back to that just to have the interim and then change it if necessary. That's what we discussed last week. Because the superintendent brought it to the board's attention that it was her recommendation to hire an interim. We haven't discussed this yet, and we haven't even discussed having a director of special services yet. So if we could just leave it as interim, like we discussed last week, that would be helpful. And take out the director until the board has the conversation and all agrees that they want, 3 different administrators still in that role. So if we could just move it back to interim director of special services. And then if we move into a director of special services, if that's where the board wants to go, then we will amend it and just fix it.
Are you comfortable with that change, Mr. Vito?
Yeah, I think last week the discussion at the table was that there were a couple of different recommendations from a few different folks. So I thought I heard interim director and I thought I heard Department of Special Services. So my changes were inclusive of both comments from a couple of different board members, whatever pleases the board. For me, it's just so that we have the person who would be overseeing the indicators would be the interim, would be the director. It's of no consequence to me either way. So if that pleases Ms. Coughlin, I have no issue with that whatsoever.
Yes, please, just interim, that way, because as a board, we haven't even had the discussion yet, nor, discussed which direction the board would like to go. So if at the point, since You recommended the interim, and we're in the process of an interim, just going with that at this point for A.
I don't know that I committed completely to an interim. We did talk about it last week. I think we need to circle back to the discussion, but obviously not this evening.
Well, obviously, we committed to an interim because we discussed, you brought it to the board's attention upon your recommendation, and if I'm correct, currently looking for an interim. So that's an agreement, but the director of special services, that's not a conversation the board has had yet.
Yes, it is. We had this conversation in July, and we talked about it again last week.
I think what Ms. Coughlin is referencing is that we have not had a conversation about the long-term
Plans for the Special
plans for the
Services
Special
Department,
Services
I would agree with
Administration.
that. You are right.
From this point on, because you brought forward an interim just a few weeks ago, that was your recommendation, and then possibly discussing a director back in July, but not from, we're currently sitting in October. I mean, that's apples and oranges at the moment, so that's
Right.
so if we could just
As
leave it
long
at
as-
interim.
Yeah, as long as the item can be amended. If for some reason we don't have an interim, we can't find an interim, and we go in the direction of a director, I just want to make sure that we can change the goals.
Yeah, the board can amend the goals at any time.
We can amend them at any time, but we are currently at the moment, you brought to our attention that you wanted to have an interim of Director of Special Services. So that is what we are doing currently. So since we are approving these goals currently right now, then we should keep the wording of interim, and it can be amended at any time when the board has the conversation, if they want to have 3 administrators, if what the board wants to do. So if we could keep it to the current stage, that would be fine.
Okay.
So we're going to take out
everything else,
and we're just going to leave in interim.
Interim Director of Special Services.
Right.
Yes.
So then we can't vote on this at
Yeah, we
this
can.
point?
We can.
Oh, we can?
Yeah, we'll
Okay.
amend it.
Okay.
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 Yeah.
Good.
Are there any other questions, comments, or changes prior to voting? Okay, seeing none, can we please have a roll call vote?
Yes.
Ms. Pellet?
Yes.
Mr. Sparta?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Nunziata?
Yes.
Mrs. Bucieri?
Yes.
Mrs. Coughlin?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Mr. Kepnes, your final business administrator's report?
Okay. Number 1, for your information, you'll see listed as the use of buildings and grounds, and again, it is pending receipt of acceptable protocols, state guidelines. I did speak with Ms. Buffalino, and she's doing both of those in tandem. She's waiting to hear from state requirements so that she complies, and she will also have put together her protocols before the folks come into the building. But assuming all of that is in place, we would certainly allow them into the building with those protocols in place. Page 8, letter B, certifying that the budget certainly is intact, closing out the month of September. And number 2, it's recommended that the board approve the following financial reports as listed.
Can we have a motion for recommendation 2A?
Moved.
Mr. Sparta, second.
Second.
Mr. Peak, questions or comments? Seeing none, can we please have a roll call vote?
Ms. Pellet?
Yes.
Mr. Sparta?
Yes, abstain on check noted.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Nunziata?
Yes.
Mrs. Bucieri?
Yes.
Mrs. Coughlin?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Dr. Peak?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Letter B, it's recommended the board accept the report of the secretary and the treasurer of school monies closing out the month of September.
Can we have a motion for recommendation 2B?
So moved.
Mr. Sparta, second.
Second.
Ms. Bucieri, questions or comments? Seeing none, can we please have a roll call vote?
Mr. Sparta?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Nunziata?
Yes.
Mrs. Bucieri?
Yes.
Mrs. Coughlin?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Dr. Peak?
Yes.
Ms. Pellet?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Letter C, it's recommended that the board approve the transportation as listed below, going to the bottom of page 10.
Can we have a motion for recommendation 2C?
Moved.
Mr. Sparta, second.
Second.
Mr. Peak, questions or comments? Seeing none, can we please have a roll call vote?
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Nunziata?
Yes.
Mrs. Bucieri?
Yes.
Mrs. Cobbin?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Dr. Peak?
Yes.
Ms. Pellet?
Yes.
Mr. Sparta?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Letter D, it's recommended the board approve the tuition contract as listed in the chart below.
Can we have a motion for recommendation 2D?
Moved.
Mr. Sparta, second.
Second.
Mr. Peak, questions or comments? Seeing none, can we please have a roll call vote?
Mr. Nunziata?
Yes.
Mrs. Bucieri?
Yes.
Mrs. Cobbin?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Dr. Peak?
Yes.
Ms. Pellet?
Yes.
Mr. Sparta?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Letter E, it's recommended that the board approve the comprehensive maintenance plan for the 2021 school year.
Can we have a motion for recommendation 2E?
Moved.
Mr. Sparta, second.
Second.
Ms. Bucieri, questions or comments? Seeing none, can we please have a roll call vote?
Mrs. Bucieri?
Yes.
Mrs. Cobbin?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Dr. Peak?
Yes.
Ms. Pellet?
Yes.
Mr. Sparta?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Nunziata?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Letter F, it's recommended that the board approve the M1 report for the 2021 school year.
Can we have a motion for recommendation 2F?
Moved.
Mr. Sparta, second.
Second.
Ms. Bucieri, questions or comments? Seeing none, can we please have a roll call vote?
Mrs. Cobbin?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Dr. Peak?
Yes.
Ms. Pellet?
Yes.
Mr. Sparta?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Nunziata?
Yes.
Mrs. Bucieri?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Letter G, it's recommended that the board approve advertising for the purpose of going to bid for the sale of the following district wood shop equipment due to the fact the equipment is obsolete or in disrepair.
Can we have a motion for recommendation 2G?
Moved.
Mr. Sparta, second.
Second.
Mr. Peak, questions or comments?
You beat me.
Seeing none, can we please have a roll call vote?
Mrs. Cobbin?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Dr. Peak?
Yes.
Ms. Pellet?
Yes.
Mr. Sparta?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Nunziata?
Yes.
Mrs. Bucieri?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Letter H, it's recommended that the board approve Performance Pediatrics as an additional vendor to perform occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy services, and evaluations as needed at the following rates listed below.
Can we have a motion for recommendation 2H?
Moved.
Mr. Sparta, second.
Second.
Mr. Peak, questions or comments? Seeing none, can we please have a roll call vote?
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Dr. Peak?
Yes.
Ms. Pellet?
Yes.
Mr. Sparta?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Nunziata?
Yes.
Mrs. Bucieri?
Yes.
Mrs. Cobbin?
No.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Letter I, it's recommended that the board approve the following non-public allocations and related spending on behalf of Fields of Green Montessori School for the 2021 school year.
Can we have a motion for recommendation 2I?
Moved.
Mr. Sparta, second.
Second.
Mr. Peak, questions or comments? Seeing none, can we please have a roll call vote?
Dr. Peak?
Yes.
Ms. Pellet?
Yes.
Mr. Sparta?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Nunziata?
Yes.
Mrs. Bucieri?
Yes.
Mrs. Cobbin?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Letter J, it's recommended that the board accept the Coronavirus Relief Fund CRF grant or allocation in the amount of $143,644.
Can we have a motion for recommendation 2J?
Moved.
Mr. Sparta, second.
Second.
Mr. Peak, questions or comments?
Will we see a list of where this money is utilized?
I can answer that, yes. Ultimately, we are planning to use it towards supplies. So far, the categories are, you might have seen those 3-sided desk shields for students, and we do have a question out to our principals who have asked the faculty regarding air purifiers or teacher. It's not a plexiglass, but it stands on their desk as a separation between students and the teacher. So it would be applied towards those things.
And that would utilize that entire amount?
Yes, it would.
The student ones, are they clear or are they like a cardboard? Can they see through them? Are they clear?
They can see through all three, they will see through
Okay.
all 3 sides, yes.
Good, thank you.
Do you know when we're receiving those?
Should be within 3 to 4 weeks at this point.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, can we please have a roll call vote?
Ms. Pellet?
Yes.
Mr. Sparta?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Nunziata?
Yes.
Mrs. Bucieri?
Yes.
Mrs. Toggle?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Dr. Peak?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Mr. Kepnes?
That's all I have, thank you.
Thank you. Item O is for public participation, and this is for items on the agenda or any other business. If members of the public who are either here in person or on the live stream would like to submit a comment or share a comment with us, they can do so at this time. Please share your name, part of town, and you'll have 5 minutes. We'll begin with members of the public who are in person.
Hi, Mr. Riddler. I am a school teacher. And we're in resident. First, let me start by saying, when we were going back to school, I was one of those that were 100% for it. I even actually bragged to many of my family members who are in education that we had a great plan. We would be safe. We would be ready to go back. I think we kind of lived in this Verdant bubble where we thought it wasn't going to come here. We didn't really have much of it when it happened. And then it happened, and it was here. And it was a student in one of my classes. So it kind of brings you to reality real quick. So still, okay, it happens. We're doing the protocols, we're doing what we have to. Then we get we're coming together in November. That was a hard lump to take for many of us, not just me. That now you're going to have all of those kids back in. But again, it was half day. You could go a little bit with it. Then Monday it's going to be everybody, and it's going to be lunch. The high school has 1 lunch period. We don't have 4 lunch periods anymore. So that's 800 children or staff that are in the building on that day that we're all going to say, take your masks off and eat, and pray you don't give anybody COVID. We can only have 500 people outside at a football game. But we're going to bring 800 people inside in the dead of winter and have them all take their masks off. I'm also the building rep at the high school, so I can tell you this, that there's not a teacher there that wants to do that lunch duty, whether it's in a cafeteria or it's in a classroom. It's a scary thing. Going to school now, the way we're going, teaching the kids, is it a lot of work? Yes, it's a lot of work. But generally, we feel safe. Bringing 800 kids into the high school all together is not making anybody feel safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any other members of the public who are here in person?
Warren O'Donnell. I just wanted to mention something to the board just to see if this COVID thing, we're going to go back on the 16th, then we're going back full-time in December, and I understand that that's moving in a somewhat positive direction. But what happens, do we have a contingency plan that if this whole thing falls apart and within the next 4 weeks, the state or our community somehow decides that we have to close the schools again? Do we have a plan in place that we can scramble real quick and put this learning process in place for our kids and make it effective, given that we have to all go 100% virtual again? Because it could happen. And I can tell you from personal experience that it's happening to my daughter down in Lacey, New Jersey. Okay? If they have one more COVID case, they're done. They're going 100% virtual, closing schools. Okay, so I think we need to think on that end also, not just, hey, let's open the schools, let's go here. And part of me says, yeah, let's open the schools. The other part of me says, we got to have a plan in case we can't. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you. Do any other members of the public who are here in person have comments? Okay, so I will go over to the live stream, and there are 3 comments at this time. The first is from Jeff DeYoung of Scenic Lakes. What are the planned logistics for use of student screens? Who cleans them? With what will they be cleaned, and how often will they be cleaned? Where will these be stored? The next comment is from Jennifer Bott of Central Vernon. I am a part-time aide and would like to ask how our hours and schedules will be adjusted going forward. The next comment is from Amanda Rieger of Glenwood. Why are we acting like this is different from March when we all shut down? Why bring 25 plus kids back to a single class, not to mention lunches? And the next comment is from Lisa Jezebel of Maple Grange, Glenwood. Is the proposed plan that was released Monday going forward, or will that be tabled due to safety concerns for students and staff? Mr. Shea, are there other comments at this time? The last comment that has come through is from Linda Kroger Wilson of Highland Lakes. Make it all virtual for everyone with kids in school, option working virtual. Has this been considered?
Can you read that again?
Yeah, I read it exactly. So it's make it all virtual for everyone with kids in school, option working virtually. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, I see what it's saying. To have all students be learning virtually, and then if
they
students wanted, they would work from school
Okay.
on a virtual
I
plan.
get it. Thank you.
And a comment has come through from Kelly Cosenza of Scenic Lakes. Very concerned over the size of the classes, will be at when blue and gold merge. How will a teacher be able to teach effectively, as well as students learning with crowded classrooms? Is that all of the comments, Matt? Okay. So at this time, we're going to close it to public participation and move on to item P, which is the open board member forum. I know that a lot of questions have come through, whether in person or on the live stream, and some of those, if a conversation occurs at this point, some of those can be addressed tonight.
Right.
Not all of them necessarily will be, and Ms. Davino and Dr. McKay have those questions, so they are aware of what those concerns are. But I want to start by first opening it to my fellow board members.
So I think that there's a little bit of misinformation out there because unfortunately the board does not get to vote on these reopening plans. And I think that the public thinks that we do get to vote on that. And I brought that up last week when we were talking about what we were going to do, increasing in classroom hours and things like that. I think the public feels that we do get to have a vote on that, and we do not.
I think
So I just want to make sure that everybody knows that, if we did, there would probably be a lot more conversation. We were allowed to vote for the reopening plan in July, but that was really, it it wasn't a vote saying that we were going to shut things down. It was just a vote saying that we weren't happy with the plan going forward. But we really had no power over that. So I just wanted to make that a point. The other piece is, unfortunately, we don't hear the teacher input, and I love the fact that the teachers are here today so that we can hear that input. I know it's probably difficult to email the board because you're worried about, having your name attached to that, but it is so important to come forward so that we can hear what is going on in real life, because we don't get that data. We get all these surveys and, we don't get to feel what you're feeling unless we hear it. So I think that it's very important that you come and voice that. Until I saw that picture, I didn't realize what 21 people look like in Glen Meadow in a classroom. When we did our building and grounds tour, and Teresa can attest to this, we walked through and our director told us that it wasn't going to look anything like that. As a matter of fact, it was going to be about 9 students, 6 feet apart, and with a rather large table like Teresa and I are right now. So when I look at that picture, that concerns me, and I think we should have a really big conversation about that. We have this entire school here, which we decided that we were going to pause on the market. And maybe we should be thinking about how we're going to utilize that, because that would scare me if I was a teacher, That was another issue that I think that we should have an open discussion about. I'm just going to bullet point and then we can kind of speak. The aides not getting paid, I can't even comprehend how that could possibly be. So I'd really like an answer on that. And the lunch piece, I'd really like an answer on the logistics of that. If we can talk about how that, is it going to be in the classroom, how that's going to be. But that class size is just amazing to me, because we never heard that it was going to be, 34 students. Is that true?
With the virtual students staying out of school, when we find out on the 23rd where the students are choosing to be, we would then have the numbers and we would be able to figure out whether we were able to do it in classrooms or not. So that was the whole piece that seems to be missing, is the virtual piece, right, and how many students are virtual. So when plan was proposed, it was the 1/3 of the students at the present time being virtual.
So from what I understand, one of the concerns is that more Glen Meadow hybrid students virtual students are coming back for hybrid, whereas at the high school, more hybrid students are going to virtual. So Glen Meadow is already a more crowded school. Right. So that's why you're hearing more about the, right, that's my understanding from.
And that answer is not to dismiss anybody's concerns.
So is there a regulation on how many students are allowed in a certain square footage of classroom? Isn't there some type of rule there?
Are you talking about like pre-COVID?
No.
She's talking about the mandate. It said something like, if possible, or there's some arbitrary words there. So there is no, yeah, there's no, I don't think there is.
I'm just shocked at it, because when we did our buildings and grounds tour, and Teresa, whenever you want to speak, but I'm just shocked at it, because we were walked through exactly how the students were going to be set up.
But that was when we were.
Yeah, I don't think that the board was misled in any way on that, because that was when we were going to have. Right. Cohort, as we currently have the cohort model of blue and gold teams. When you have less students in a class, you're obviously going to be able to socially distance.
We discussed both. We discussed both. We discussed what it was going to look like in that real time, at that time, which was a month ago, and what it would look like once we put both cohorts together.
I don't remember that. I was on the tour. I'm not saying that we didn't talk about it. I don't recall that. I do think.
No, you weren't on that tour, Karen.
Was that another one?
Yeah, it was just.
Kelly.
It was.
that was the first one.
You were.
Okay.
That was the first one. I'm sorry.
So just to go down some of your points, though, I think that when you state that the board doesn't have a say. I think what might be confusing to the public is that we had a meeting last week on Thursday, and multiple board members talked very strongly about the need to move forward with getting back to 5 days full, full days, 5 days a week. And there were multiple board members. And then Monday, we get a plan. So I think that's why the public might have the perception that the board, if not has a vote in it, at least has some sort of sway with the administrators. That's just my take on why there's an interpretation that we have more say than we might actually have. And then secondarily, I'm super concerned about this plan. And by the way, I just want to say that last week I did say something about virtual students feeling the lack of face time, but I did not mean that as a criticism of teachers at all. I think that you guys are, all the teachers are doing an amazing job. It's a phenomenal amount of work is going in. It's purely a situational thing for me. I don't blame any educators for that situation. I just, recognize that there's gaps, but it's not because of the educators. And in terms of transitioning to a full day 5-week instruction, I share your concerns about safety. I also think that our educators are already overtaxed, seeing to the needs of in-person and virtual learners with our current schedule. I do not see how we're going to meet the needs of all of our students with that kind of a situation to contend with. And regarding your point that no one foresaw a lot of these things, what I think I'm feeling a little bit concerned about is no one also said that we were going to push toward 5 days, full days a week, whether or not we could actually do it well. That was never said. So, and that's what I feel like we're doing now.
Okay, so let me try to answer some of the questions that people had.
I don't want to cut the conversation short yet.
All right,
I think
okay.
that some board members might still have comments.
Yeah, I think one of the good things that happened over the summer was the reopening committee, where we had everybody sit at the table and everybody could voice their concerns and try to come up with the best plan possible. And so now we're in the plan, and then, maybe we've identified some shortcomings. Maybe we could improve on the existing plan, but I think that the communication still has to happen before any future plan is implemented. So obviously the teachers need to be heard. We should have conversations here at the table, and parent voices need to be heard, which is why we were gathering a lot of that information from parent surveys and things. But I think that Ms. Davino's comments about, this not being the last iteration, hopefully it still is a work in progress, and we can come to good solutions that are best for the students. So hopefully that will
Right,
happen.
so if I could speak for Ms. Davino, I imagine she would like to know what the direction is, because I sense that there's been a change in our tone. So, Ms. Davino, are you feeling as well as I am that there's a change?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, not every board member has spoken.
Mhm.
We have one voice absent at the table. And I did mean when I meant in my opening comments that these plans are iterations. And the only thing that happens next week is the same exact thing that we've had since the beginning. We're still in October. We still have our virtual Wednesdays. The shift this Wednesday is a bit of a synchronous model. I do want to be clear, even though I modeled it last week at the board meeting, but the members of the audience didn't hear it. Janet DeScenzo hit the nail on the head. The model I've described is a best practice. It is not synchronous sitting in front of the computer all day long. I've said that over and over again. I said that at the curriculum committee meeting. I said it at the work session meeting last week. It is a 10 to 15 minute direct instruction of synchronous time, ability for a teacher to model whatever the challenge, the lesson, the protocol, the problem is for that particular class, children to ask some questions, and then for children to work independently. Part of the best practice, and of course Janet will correct me if I'm wrong because she certainly is more skilled in this area than I am, but the point is to try to mimic as much as possible what we would do if COVID weren't here. And what that would be the teacher modeling direct instruction, providing, checking for understanding, and then having children work in small groups. Well, understandably, we can't work in small groups right now because of COVID. And the barriers that COVID is placing on our children, on our educators, are insurmountable right
Absolutely.
now. There is absolutely no way to get around COVID on October 15th of 2020. And unfortunately, I don't think there'll be a way to get around COVID throughout this entire school year. So when I talked about iterations, that's not a line. I mean, we've looked at every iteration from AM, PM, in other words, having one group in the morning, one group in the afternoon. We've looked at, virtual for a portion of the population like grade 6-12. We looked at virtual for everybody. We've considered, Kelly, moving grade levels that are higher in number over here to Walnut Ridge. It's something we've talked about. So there are so many iterations of the plan, and our parent community, and I don't want to speak for the parent community, also has a voice, and I guess through some of the surveys they've come out. And there's no way there's going to be a plan that it works for everybody. There's just not. So, but I am hearing a bit of a different tone this evening than I heard last week. So that's a challenge for me, right? Because like you said, Ms. Mitchell, that the board doesn't really get to vote on the plan, and all we're doing is shifting, right? Is to continue to try to provide what everybody needs. And the reality is we can't provide what everybody needs because there's no perfect solution. So I agree with Chuck. I'm hearing a different direction from the board tonight than I heard last week. And I'm not saying that nobody voted on it. I'm not trying to put words in anybody's mouth. But there was some vocal opposition to the plan that was provided last week. And that was combining blue and gold with half days. The only change to the iteration was full days, not until December, of course. And everybody has said it. We don't know if we'll get to December, folks. I mean, we have to be honest about that, too. Martin, you said that, I think, in your remarks, Mr. O'Donnell, that it's possible that, we'll end up closed at some point, right? So, these are all things that we take into consideration. So, but I don't know if we want to hear from the remainder of the board, Chuck. I mean, I'd like to hear from everybody.
Sure.
To see what the feedback is, but you were going to say something of the plan.
Sure, no, absolutely.
Well, I mean, I'm happy to go. I hope my microphone is close enough. Can everybody hear? Last week, I did bring up equitable. It's interesting because I'm also an educator in a little bit of a different role. I was just in a school district today. I have a master's in education from Fordham, and I spent 20 years in this field. I also was a member of NJEA for years. But it's interesting because I'm usually fighting for equity from the other side, from special education side. So this, from my perspective, I still stand by it because now I'm shifting from the role of special education to more of a general role. So that I don't take away by any means. And again, that was my thing last week, and it still is, because I still do believe that across the board, somehow, some way, it should be at least offered. I'm not an administrator. It's not my job to say how it should be offered. I was not advocating kids sitting in front of a screen for 8 hours, 5 days a week. Whatever offered some sort of equity across the board, then that's what I was looking for. Was I looking for 100% equity? No, because I know that's impossible even on a non-COVID day, non-COVID year. It's naturally impossible. Was I looking to even out the playing field? Yes, and I still am. So, but what I will say, I was thrilled. I actually, because last week I brought up a personal example, I'll bring up another personal example. One of my sons came downstairs into our kitchen one day and he threw me off. He looked so relaxed. And I said to him, "You okay? You look great." And he said to me, "Mom, my teacher just did 2 lessons 2 days in a row." And he goes, "I feel great." He goes, "I learned it. I was able to walk away and I got it." You know what I did? I sent that teacher an email thanking that teacher. because to see, as a parent and as an educator, struggling like everybody else, to see my own son's shoulders just go down and to see him take a deep breath, and it was the first one I've seen him taken in a long time. And I thank that teacher because I don't think that was easy by any means under any circumstance. And I'm not saying because I sat up here and said that it happened. No, I know it was rolling into place anyway. But what I'm saying is, I still stand by that. I can't say how it has to be done. That's administrator's job. But I was looking for some sort of equitable manner in whatever manner that is chosen. I will say, last week, I did not bring up the 5 days a week, all day. That makes me very uncomfortable. Had I known that was going to be part of the plan, I would have voiced my opposition to it. Because I am very uncomfortable moving into the winter with no social distancing or absolute minimum social distancing, 5 days a week, all day, combined cohorts. Last week, I was not a proponent. I never said anything about the 5 days a week, the mixing all of this. We're going into the winter. The numbers in New Jersey are going up. Talk about irony. I think it was just yesterday or the day before, it must have been Wednesday, New Jersey met its own criteria to become a quarantine state. So our numbers technically are going up. Are they going up specifically right here in town? No, but the state of New Jersey numbers are going up naturally and unfortunately. I'm very uncomfortable with students eating in school. That makes me very uncomfortable. I thank you for bringing up the one lunch. Thank you for, I have to be honest with you, I wasn't even aware of that to that level. And to know that there's going to be, give or take, 800 kids, who's virtual, who's there, plus all the teachers, plus all the paraprofessionals, staff, faculty, administration, that's on top of all the students we have. That makes me uncomfortable because all the data I've seen and I've read is that there's situations with eating. It's restaurants. It's, could be weddings. They're beginning to wonder if it's, has to do with taking the mask off, eating. I'm not stating that's it, but that's just what I've read. And I'm thinking if we all can't go into a restaurant right now and life isn't normal for us eating in restaurants, then why would we have 800 plus people in one school all eating in one period? I'd also like to say thank you to the teachers and everyone else, the whole faculty staff, everybody for filling out that survey. I read through it. I read all the comments. I read through all of them. And something that concerned me as chair of special education and caught my eye was I noticed numerous comments about special education, the numbers being high. That was the first time this was brought to my attention. And without that survey, I never would have seen that. So thank you very much, because that's something that the committee can bring back and we can start looking into from a committee perspective. We can ask the administration about that. But I was not aware, examples were written in the survey of actual numbers. Well, I can't say because I don't know the classes, but some of those numbers were really high. So that's concerning because, and some of the comments obviously didn't expand on which class or which group, and I know ratios in my head, but I was thinking, I don't know the exact situation, but I know that sounds like a high ratio. And then I couldn't quite tell if some of them were all virtual or all in person, but some of those numbers were very high. So thank you for the survey, bringing that to our attention. And then my last thought on this is Glen Meadow, and not to ignore the little ones by any means, the little peanuts as I love to call them. But Glen Meadow, when we reconfigured years ago, which I voted no to.
Yes.
And I voted no to the reconfiguration years ago, specifically because Glen Meadow, and I was very vocal about this back then, and every time I bring up that reconfiguration vote, I always refer back to it. I voted no for it because it overcrowded Glen Meadow. And we were told, oh, over the years, Glen Meadow, these kids are all just going to move on. We won't have this problem. And And I'm not saying by any means the administration didn't look into this, because it's not something we've tasked them with, but that was a concern years ago. It's still a concern. And I remember taking a tour of Glen Meadow years ago, and when I saw the lunch, I could not believe how crowded the lunch situation was. And if it hasn't changed from that, I don't even understand how we could consider bringing all the kids back and eating. And I don't know at Glen Meadow, so I apologize, but at the high school, do they still have those tables at the cafeteria with the few circle seats all
Yes.
the way around? The kids have nowhere to go. They're going to be there. It's not like you can take your seat and physically move it. Does Glen Meadow have those as well?
I think they're benches, but they're
Yeah.
similar.
So it's the same thing. So we're literally going to have children who cannot pick up a chair and move it. Like, we're adults. We have chairs. We can get up and move it. If we're in the faculty room, we can physically move our chairs. These students are going to be sitting on the round seats like elbow to elbow. So I am very concerned looking at the Glen Meadow numbers. Again, I'm talking years ago, way before we even knew COVID was a problem. But that concerns me now. Had I seen the plan prior, I mean, obviously I thought we were going to discuss it and go over it. I would have been happy to discuss all of this. But I think one of the things that just kind of caught my eye and concerned me a smidgen with all of this is on the letter that was sent on October 14th, it starts off with, "Dear parents, last week at the Board of Education meeting, district administrators presented a plan for further reopening our schools, period." Then it goes on to the correspondence. Yes, we were presented a plan, but it wasn't this one. And when I saw that sentence, and it made me think, but that's not the plan we were presented. So it looked like this is at that moment what we were like discussing last week, and we weren't, and perhaps that's just worded wrong. But it just kind of, when I read that sentence, I thought, wait a second, I saw that, and I had all these thoughts in my head, you know, many of these, and then filling in today, thank you. And then hearing from Ms. Davino, Dr. McKay, other board members, those are just quite a few of my thoughts. So that's where I stand on the new plan, so.
So you would not advocate for a full day because of the lunch situation?
Not just the lunch, just, when you, both cohorts together, to me, changes the whole dynamic of everything.
Right.
If we kept the blue and gold, you know, I'm willing to explore. The lunch makes me very uncomfortable in general.
Sure.
But now bringing both cohorts together, no.
Right.
And especially, this is not May of 2021. We don't have open windows. We don't have kids walking around outside. You know, at the high school, you can open the doors. They can walk between, get a little fresh air a little bit. We're going into the, you know, heading into the dead of winter. And when it snows up here, it really snows. So the kids aren't going to be able to just walk through in between. So, you know, if this was May of 2021, April, I might feel very differently, because I might say, okay, spring's here, we're opening windows, we made it through the hump of the winter, the flu season. I know, Dr. McKay, last week you mentioned the flu season.
Yeah.
That's another very stark reality as well. And, you know, so I don't want to commit to anything at the moment because I don't know, but
No, I understand
the idea
that.
of bringing the cohorts together, long days. But then on the flip hand, I mean, I also understand parents have to work, but these are, you know, overall my concerns. So
I think
those
the problem was that we discussed briefly, and then all of a sudden we had, you know, the new plan kind of like thrown at us for whatever reason that happened. It was very quick, so we didn't really have any time to speak about it and digest it.
Sure.
And, you know, maybe that was a mistake of, you know, timing or what have you. But I think that was the issue too, that we were, you know, we did have conversation about the 5-day, but we weren't able to even discuss it, and then it was just there.
Right.
You know.
I just want to pause the conversation. Mr. Sparta texted me to let me know that he has lost power where he's zooming from. I don't want anyone to think he just left the meeting or conversation unannounced.
Thanks.
Sorry.
So I just think that, I just think input is very, very valuable. And I think that
Well,
we
that's
have
what-
to.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing now. So.
Yeah, so I just think that we have to hear from everyone. And I know we've done the best we can with the surveys and things like that, but there's a piece about, feeling what somebody's feeling and seeing them live and hearing that. I don't know, it's just very telling, and it makes you think maybe in a different direction. And I think that, that's what's going on right now.
Okay.
Natalie, were you
Yeah.
going to comment?
Yeah, I will comment. And I do appreciate our staff. I do appreciate all the work, our administration, our teachers, the paraprofessionals. It's definitely unprecedented, and I definitely appreciate that. I do think that the plan which was presented last week, did have a goal of bringing the cohorts together. And, if you watch the meeting, I was one of the members who pushed for a target date, because I felt that if we have a goal, but we don't have a date for it, we're not going to achieve it. So I asked for a date. It didn't really matter to me what the date was. I mean, I would want it to be this school year,
Right, because
2021.
on the opening slide, I had said the foreseeable future.
Exactly. So I wanted a date. So that kind of precipitated the conversation. And I did get a lot of feedback from parents, from members of the community, thanking me for asking for a target date, because it is important. And as Karen has said, as many members of the community have said, and our faculty and staff has said, this is an unprecedented time, and our students, while everybody is working very hard and doing as much as they possibly can, their education is not the same, whether it's completely virtual, whether it's hybrid. Students are feeling isolated. Students, our special needs students are struggling and not getting the same interventions that they might be getting, which is concerning to me. There are students that might not be getting meals for whatever reason. That is also concerning. So it's a very hard balance, and I acknowledge that. I don't think having a target date for combining the cohorts is a bad thing. Now, if we can't meet that target, then we readjust. You kind of, it's really hard to steer the ship if you're not moving, right? The ship has to be moving in order to steer it. So if we're moving towards a target, and as we get closer to it, our administration says, hey, this is going to happen at this school, or this isn't working, we need to push it back. That's completely understandable. But if we don't have a date that we're working towards, I think we're not going to achieve it. And then we have a contingency plan, because completely understandable. Something could happen. The governor could change the rules. I mean, he can come out tomorrow and give a press conference and change the rules for a school. So I understand that,
To
right?
address Mr. O'Donnell's point, that's
Exactly.
exactly what Mr. Gagliostro, Mr. Rogers, and I are working on now.
And I'm sure you are.
Although if we're reimagining this, then we've got much more work to do. But it's when we go all virtual, and I say when or if we go all
exactly.
virtual.
So we don't know what's going to happen, but again, that doesn't mean you don't have a plan for combining cohorts, or going towards 5 days, or going towards a full day with lunch, and maybe thinking outside of the box, not putting 800 kids in a lunchroom. I understand the concern there, but having the goal to educate our children. Really, I would think everyone in this room would agree with me that the best way to educate our children would be in person with the teachers that they care about, with the teachers that care about them, that know their content, that can we're human beings that need a social contact. And balancing that with the fear of COVID is very difficult, and I acknowledge that. But I don't think there's anything wrong with having a goal to work towards, and if we adjust it, we adjust it. If we can't meet that target, but we're able to do half of it, 2/3 of it, that's understandable. But if we don't have the goal, if we're not working towards it, and if we don't have steps leading up to a date, I mean, just talk to anyone who does project planning. You're not going to do it.
I think a goal, though, in the absence, a time goal, in the absence of a criteria for safety and a plan for meeting the needs of all of our students, that feels to people like a ticking time bomb, like time coming and I'm going to be going back to school in this situation that I don't think is safe, and I don't hear how they're going to make me safe, and I don't even know what safety means to them. Like, you need to first establish what you're going to do by that time.
Well, I think that's what they're working on.
And to just say safe, like, then we see a sign and we go, whoa, that doesn't look so safe.
Well, I think
I think that's the problem. I'm not saying you're wrong. that
I
there
think it
shouldn't be a
helps our
goal, but
working
that's the
parents,
problem.
though, by having a date that we're targeting. I think it helps our working parents.
But then if you miss the date, then.
No, I
you know,
understand
well,
that, but I
it's
think
a chicken and egg thing.
And I think that the step here that we're missing, and I think it got missed last week, and it wasn't a part of this plan, was should we be setting a target date for something that we don't necessarily know is safe, right? That is my concern. I used the wording last week that I don't think we can be too cautious.
No, I agree with you on that. I just don't know how Dr. McKay, if we didn't set a target date, how would he know what it was going to look like, how many students were actually going to be in person?
There might not be but there may not be a date for something that's not going to happen because it cannot be done safely.
No, I understand that, but what I'm saying is like, it's going to have to come a point where he's going to have to know how many students are going to be virtual and how many students are going to be in person when that day comes, so that way he can figure out like how many people in the classroom. Otherwise, I don't even know how you would plan.
Well, that's what we're getting phone calls from the parents, and that's the phone calls. The phone calls to my office is, what percentage of students are now out virtual?
And that might change.
Because if we're bringing the blue and gold, of course
Right.
that's going to change. And if
Yeah.
we're bringing the blue and gold together, they're asking me for an assessment of, do they think that those students who are virtual will stay out? Or they come back in? And I said, well, unless we have a date that you would announce what you're going to do, and people are like, well, you haven't addressed all my questions, and therefore I feel like I can't make a full decision.
You can't
Well,
commit
you
without
can't make
the
an
decision.
educated decision if you don't really know the ratio of how many kids are actually going to be there, how many
Right.
kids are going to
So
actually be in my
ultimately, parents will have
classroom.
to make a decision.
Sure,
And it's a tough decision. I don't,
Of course it is.
I'm not
So I don't
minimizing
know
that.
what comes first, the chicken or the egg with that.
That's exactly it.
Right? But I mean, that.
But you've heard from our teachers tonight, and you know that you hear their concerns. Now, we've heard from parents and virtual parents, and we've heard their concerns. We've heard from students in the student life meeting, and believe it or not, 3 of those students were virtual, not 2.
I thought it was 2 and 2.
Yeah, it was 3 out of 4. Yeah,
I thought it was
virtual.
2 and 2.
Yeah.
I think it was 2 and 2. That's what I
Yeah,
thought.
because the girls
No.
were
They were in the room.
in.
They couldn't be
Yep.
virtual. They
So
were in
I
the room.
think one of them was.
And I think this conversation needs to continue, and it needs to continue tonight. I just want to go to the Zoom and ask Mr. Sweeney, because I know you're on there. It's sometimes hard to cut in. Did you have anything you wanted to share?
It's very hard to cut in. I feel like I'm just an observer and not a participant. I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry I'm not
Virtual
there.
learning.
That's what virtual,
That's what virtual learning looks like, everybody.
Jen beat me to it.
So,
Good
with all
segue,
that in
Jen.
mind, I just don't think it's the right time. It seems like we're doing things backwards. We're bringing everybody back together when things are getting colder and we're going to be warming up the buildings. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but it just seems to make sense that these germs are going to be more prevalent, in the warmer climates. It just seems like counterintuitive to me, but Karen and Chuck were following the direction that they got last week. So, I hope that we are doing the right thing, but I fear that we're not.
Well, your voice needs to be heard as well.
Yeah, and I want to echo what Mr. Sweeney is saying. I have very serious concerns about the safety. I have either alluded to it or made my stance perfectly clear, depending on the meeting and the conversation. Ms. DeVito, you know where I stand based on the conversations that we have had.
Sure.
I don't believe that you can have 3,000 students 5 days a week, full day, with lunches in our schools and not be asking for a problem. And I think that if you are advocating for more in-person instruction, you're cutting off your nose to spite your face, because what's going to happen, or what may happen, is you end up having more cases of COVID and the entire district ends up being virtual again because of that.
Exactly.
And I said in my president's report this evening that we're treading water. When you're treading water, or when you can only tread water, you don't jump into the deep end. I think that, I understand the desire to have a date for where the next phases of a plan should go. I don't personally know if we should be going to those next phases anytime soon. It may not be till the spring, maybe the phases are different. We may look at bringing both cohorts back, but not do the lunches, or do lunches with full day, but only have half the students there so that they can spread out further. I don't know what the answer is right now here at this table, and I think that Mike's comment that utilizing the reopening committee, where we have representatives from the VTEA, VTAA, parents, board members, utilizing that model to solicit feedback on proposed plans is probably a good practice. But I have very serious concerns.
I advocated last week for a cautious approach, a gradual and cautious approach, and I still adhere to that.
Well, I'm going to defer to our superintendent, who I support 100%. But I will say that I think the tone has changed, and maybe we need to relook at the plan.
Yeah, there was a very different tone and a very different conversation in this room last week. And again, the plan is always, it's always changing. Or maybe it's not. Maybe it's exactly where it is right now, and that's the best we can do, right? That's an option, that where it is now is the best we can do. But we have to, it doesn't mean, I think one of the things that maybe Mr. Nunziata talked about at the beginning was listening in his opening remarks, and how important it is to listen to each other. I've done a lot of listening this week. I'll continue to do that. I've been on the phone with many parents. Believe it or not, there are many parents who have called or emailed and said, thank you, we're looking forward to getting our children back in school. But, those are anecdotal, right? I've listened to many board members with individual phone calls many, many times in the last week, and I'll continue to do that. And we'll continue to work toward the best possible safe solution that we can find, or maintain a course that is most comfortable. I hate to use that word, but in the sense of meeting the needs of everybody, this may be the best we could do right now, right? And we have to be honest about that.
So we'll reconvene the reopening committee.
Sure.
I'll send out an invitation to everyone tomorrow. We'll meet on Monday, and I will report out to the board. How would you like to report out, Mr. Nunziata? Would you like a written report for everyone, or?
Yeah, I think a written report would be appropriate, and if we need to schedule another board meeting to discuss this and to present,
this is very important.
If there are updates, we're not meeting for another month.
Yeah, but we still have time before any changes to
no, of course,
the
but,
plan.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
I'm just saying we don't have a meeting until November 14th, is that
Yes,
right?
I believe so.
So, if we feel that it's necessary to have another meeting to discuss what the next few months look like, that might be necessary as well.
I mean, we could call a special meeting.
Yeah,
right.
Right, I think that's what you're referring to. Yeah.
So do members of the board have other comments on the conversation from tonight, or any other topics?
I just have one question. I know that we, at one point, had a possible plan that involved a different thing for different schools. Did we move away from that because we want everything to be the same? Because I think at one point, the high school was possibly going to be all virtual, and, there were going to be different plans.
One of the 6 iterations
Right.
of there was 6 possible plans that we put forward, that we did in the original document. The original document was 140 pages, and it had 6 different. One of them was that the high school was virtual. High school students are virtual, and then to spread everybody else out, but bring everybody in.
So was the reason that you didn't do something like that because you wanted all the schools the same, or was there other reasons? I'm just wondering, because that
You know
Glen
what?
Meadow crowded
Yeah.
situation.
So when the binder was created, that was in like May or June or something, and we didn't get the guidance from the state until afterwards.
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it didn't have to do with wanting every school to be the same necessarily?
No.
Okay. I'm just wondering if, a model might work for one school because it's more crowded or has more virtual students versus another school,
Yeah.
if you would consider that, if that were the case. I don't know if that's the case, but just was curious to know.
Do any board members have additional comments during open board member forum?
We are going to add an executive at the end, correct?
Yes, we do have to complete a conversation in executive session. So that will be after open board member forum, prior to adjournment, but no action will be taken when we get out. But I just want to confirm that conversation is.
Okay, so
We're gonna leave it
I'll
there.
set up the meeting for Monday.
Good.
We'll meet with everybody,
Sure.
and we'll report back out to the board.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Mr. Kepnes, before we go into executive session and adjourn, do you have any final comments with us?
Carry on and do the best you can do for your constituents, your students, your teachers. This is an impossible situation. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
And you're going to come back with the guitar next year.
Every year.
Yeah.
There you go. All right. So with that, I'll close open board member forum. We will add a letter Q will now be a motion to go into closed session. So it is recommended that the board enter closed session for the purposes of discussing personnel matters. Action will not be taken when the board comes out.
So moved.
Mr. Peak, second.
Second.
Second, Ms. Bucciari. All in favor?
Aye.
The board is now in close. Thank you.